All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. It's 2:08. Ms. Bocchino, please call the roll.
Mr. Trujillo?
Present.
Scott Harris?
Present.
Leah Olivari?
Present.
Diane Summers? Robert Tomas?
Present.
John Valls?
Present.
Alan Wilson?
Here.
There's a quorum.
Thank you, Ms.
Present.
Bocchino. Item C, public comment. Would anyone here like to make a public comment? Okay. Ms. Bocchino, have you received any public comments?
We have not.
Okay, thank you.
Minutes, I'd like to
Review the minutes. I'd like to have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Valls, second by Mr. Temez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Valls, would you like to ask for an excused absence for July 18th, 2022?
Yes, Mr. President, I respectfully ask for an excused absence. I was under the weather.
Okay.
I don't want to spread it here.
Ms. Olivari moved to approve. Second by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Financial report, Ms. Holbert.
Good afternoon, Board and Chairman Heather Holbert, Director of Finance for the city. Today we will review the 9 months ended June 30th, 22. So we'll start out with the Seawall Fund. So we began the year with a fund balance of $30.4 million. Revenues to date are $6.2 million. The expenditures year to date are $18.5 million, and that is primarily made up of $15.8 million transferred to the CIP for the approved projects for 22, $108,000 for administration of the fund, and $2.7 million for debt service on the Seawall debt. And that leaves us an ending fund balance of about $18 million. Within the Seawall Fund, we have uncommitted balances of committed balances of $38 million. And on the next page, we'll review those projects. Next slide, please. So here are all the projects that have been approved and moved over to the Seawall CIP. We have a total budget of $49.9 million with expenditures to date of $11.2 million, leaving that available balance of the $38 million. A lot of these projects are underway, either that or they're waiting for other things to finish up, especially within the marina, some of those marina projects. Next slide, please. Then looking at the Arena Fund, we began the year with a $14.2 million fund balance. Revenues to date are $6.2 million. Expenditures to date are about $3 million. Of that, $6.2 million was transferred to the Visitors Facility Fund, which is for the operation of the arena. $300,000 was for debt service. The larger debt service payment will come out a little bit later on in the fiscal year, and $93,000 was for administrative cost. That leaves us an ending fund balance of $17.4 million. Next slide, please. And then looking at the Economic Development Fund, just a reminder that the Economic Development Fund is no longer receiving any funds through the Type A, and that function was moved over to the Type B. So the beginning fund balance was $3.8 million. Our revenues to date, which is basically off of the investments, is about $5,000. Expenditures year to date are $1.1 million, and that is primarily made up of $876,000 worth of incentive payments, $163,000 is paid for the Whataburger Field project, and then $93,000, which is for our annual payments to the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation. That does leave us an ending fund balance of $2.7 million, and we do have outstanding commitments of $2.7 million. And after that is paid out, we anticipate to have a small balance of $11,000 to $12,000. Since this will go into next fiscal year, we'll continue to earn some interest on that. And what the plan is that we'll take any remaining funds and transfer them back over to the Type B so it can be used in a meaningful way. Next slide, please. Looking at our affordable housing, we do have 2 commitments, the Fish Pond and the Alma. Fish Pond is still continuing to move along. They are waiting for some transformers to help energize the building. They're having some challenges with that, but they are continuing to move forward. Major business incentives, we do have several of those, the largest being the Whataburger Field upgrades. And then looking at our sales tax revenue update. Next slide, please. Oh, we sure did. Okay. So affordable housing. Next slide, please. Then the major business incentives. Okay. Next slide, please. Then looking at our sales tax revenue. Again, the revenues as in the Type B are revenues are exceeding our budgeted amounts. And so year to date, we've collected $717,000 more than what was budgeted. And we continue to operate, the revenues continue to be above budgeted amounts. So that does conclude my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hulbert. Any questions by any board members? Thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate that. All right. Item G3, motion authorizing the reallocation of $2.1 million in funding from existing budgeted capital projects to newly identified projects.
Yes. So, as we've talked about numerous times over the last several months, OVG 360 has taken over the management of the ABC complex. That includes the Selena Auditorium, the Convention Center, and the arena. On the arena side, we had, the board actually had allocated funding in both 21 and 22 for various capital projects that had been planned by SMG. A few of those projects had been started. A very limited amount had been completed in 21, and really none of the money that was allocated for 22 has been utilized. So when OVG 360 came in, they did do an assessment of the arena facility and is proposing about $1.1 million worth of improvements and or capital purchases to help improve the arena. A lot of these items that are being recommended for purchase and or completion are fit within the projects that were already being proposed by SMG. Some of them are just, they're going to do something slightly different. SMG had wanted to redo the concession area. OVG 360 has a little bit different concept, but it's still going to be redoing the concession areas. And so when you look at the amount of funding that is still available and unspent from the fiscal year 21 budget and the fiscal year 22 budget, there's about $4.2 million that is unspent. Of that $4.2 million, a portion of that is the remaining budget for the Terrace project. So there is $696,000 that is remaining in that $2.4 million that is going to be continued to be utilized for that project. But in addition to that, right now our estimates are looking that we're going to need at least another $1 million to complete that project properly. Part of that is, as we have seen across a lot of our projects, construction costs have increased. The other thing is that upon analysis of that project, some of the items that SMG had recommended, I don't know that executive mid-leadership is in total agreement with that. Neither is OVG, and so there may be some design changes there to make that space more usable. So the recommendation is that there will be additional $1 million allocated to that project. Right now, we aren't sure of all the cost. That is a not to exceed. And as we get further into that, we'll understand what those true costs are going to be to complete that project sufficiently. In addition to that, there's the $1.1 million of the listing of items that are being recommended by OVG 360. We do have Brian here who is the general manager of the arena, or of the complex, but can speak specifically to these if you have any questions on it. And then I do have Jeff Edmonds here to speak a little bit more to the Terrace project if you have specific questions on that. But what our recommendation is that we would reallocate $2.1 million from the existing $4.3 million to help accomplish these projects as proposed. So,
Got a question, Mr. Valls?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Heather, when you talk about the Terrace project, that's the enclosure. Is that the Terrace project that you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. Up there on the club level where we had that area was enclosed. Yeah.
It was like a smoking area.
I think so, yeah, balcony type area.
Yeah, how's that come? I drove by there the other day. It looks like it's coming along pretty well. Is there a timeline on that?
Jeff can speak more succinctly to that than I can.
Because they're starting to have events, and I think there's another one coming up pretty soon.
I don't have the exact timeline, but what we've done on that, we did an emergency declaration to allow us to do a non-compliant procurement, and we had SMG assign those contracts to the city. And the emergency declaration does a couple of things. It allows you to buy what you need to do to deal with the situation without having to go through all of the delays associated with procurement. It also gives you access to funds, typically. However, this being funds that were overseen by Type A, this specific aspect, we had to come back and get Type A approval. So I'm going to redirect a little thing she said when she said at least, I'd say at most. That was, we thought, hey, let's come once, get enough money to be able to do this right. But we're having to make some changes to what was approved by SMG to get something that we'll feel like would be satisfactory and represent the facility the way we want it to be perceived.
And I stand corrected. That's actually what I intended to say, is that we don't feel like it's going to exceed that $1 million, and it may come in less than.
Yeah, I wanted to come here once, so I'm confident that we'll come in under that.
Okay. I'd like an opportunity to go take a tour and look at it. It's been a while. I know Mr. Tamez and I went, but Lee, you went too. It's been a while.
Sure.
And
We'll coordinate for that for you.
I think, I don't know if it was on that tour. Lee, you can refresh my memory or correct me, but I think that's where we came up with the idea to, hey, why don't we enclose that? Because that's kind of wasted space out there. And I'm glad that it's almost done, because it looks nice and it's going to be well utilized. So,
It's been over a year. It's before last year's budgeting process. So let's go ahead and get
thank
Mr.
you.
Martin to come up and introduce himself and let everyone know who's running the American Bank Center now.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm Brian Martin. I'm the new General Manager for Turn you off. Oh, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, Board. My name is Brian Martin. I'm the new General Manager for the American Bank Center with OVG 360. I see a couple familiar faces, but I don't believe I got to meet everybody yet. Yeah, I'm looking forward to what we're doing over there and what we're focusing on creating more efficiencies, creating more content, building more content with the facilities. Specifically in the arena, bringing bigger shows to that area. I'm utilizing our resources regionally and corporately as well to do that and bring these larger shows. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Specifically regarding the Terrace Suite Concourse enhancements, when we did that walkthrough, about, call it 18 months ago, there used to be a large congregation of folks at the bar right before you get to the suite area. And it would get congested, really hard to get in and get a drink, and basically people just standing around. Now, the challenge I see with the terrace improvement is figuring out a way to, without upsetting the VIP leaseholders, for anyone to go up there in that terrace area and get drinks and have the ability to watch a big screen TV or whatnot while they're out there, kind of an overflow area, so to speak. Because that is a significant footprint increase that used to be with 3 or 4 smokers. And now you have a large area that's going to be air conditioned. Plus it's beautiful, not to mention possibly utilizing it for events, private events on different nights of the year. So I'm not sure. I just throw that out there because that was kind of the idea when we first brought it up.
Gotcha. Yeah.
To your predecessors.
Yeah, and sure, and working with the city on reviewing this project and again, working with engineers on reevaluating the project and expanding the project more, I think you're right. I think there's a good opportunity there to make that a flexible space, right, for more than just premium club seat members, but like you said, for rental opportunities for public address as well. So revitalizing that or reimagining that area, because I believe in the original prints from what we saw, it was a fixed bar in an area and some fixed seating and things like that, which limits you on what you can do with the space. So it's reimagining that, putting some more temporary pieces in there that can be moved around and utilized in different ways, so that we can fulfill those.
One of your proposals in the 1.1 is parking lot swing gates. No, I saw somewhere there's actually the parking lot. It was like 350,000, was it?
350 for the Concourse LED.
400,000.
upgrades.
So also the lighting. So I get complaints from just friends like, it's so dark out here. It's a security issue as well. So just I know it's parking lot, but I'm not sure if that includes lighting or not. But just making sure that lighting is adequate in that area.
Sure.
And what I will say, too, is that this is just a preliminary list, and so these were the immediate needs. OVG 360 is continuing to do facility assessments, and we'll come back to the board at a later date once they have their, I believe you're doing a facility assessment study and some things like that. And so a lot of these concerns may be addressed once that next phase comes through. But these were more of the immediate items that really OVG 360 really felt like needed to be taken care of immediately.
Yeah, and just to clarify on that, we had our in-house team, we had our in-house team from OVG from a couple of different facilities in Dallas and in Georgia to come down and assess, and that's where these were identified from, these pieces here. But we're doing a larger study with ME engineers who are just actually in the building this past week and going through it for the next couple of weeks. And doing some assessments on some larger, bigger pictures, the HVAC pieces, the electrical pieces, the plumbing pieces for the facilities.
The roof.
The roofing, yes, exactly. Plenty of those other assets that need to be that need to be managed in the right way. So as we get more of that information back in that assessment back, we'll be glad to provide that to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
can I
you.
just add to that? And Brian did a good job summarizing it, but there's going to be some significant, in the millions of dollars, needs in the American Bank Center that we're going to have to start tackling that have been,
Absolutely.
unfortunately, the prior operator kind of deferred it and didn't really focus on it much. But we have an aged roof. We're not sure about the chiller system. It doesn't work well in major events upstairs. The kitchen is all but gutted, so we need almost a brand new kitchen.
Yeah.
And these are all big ticket items, so we just want to bring it to your attention. You'll probably see it with some of the funding requests going forward.
And it's very important. I think Mr. Valls alluded to the fact that providing a tour so some of the other board members can get an idea visibly of what you're working with.
Sure.
We have a question, Ms. Olivari.
Just a quick comment. What's the status? I think it's called the Bay Room or something like that. It's down by Salina on the north end.
The Rotunda room?
Rotunda Room. Thank you. Have we done anything to that room at all?
No, ma'am.
I think I'm just going to say, I think that's a little hidden asset in
Sure.
that space. It's got a beautiful view. The acoustics are terrible, and the AV is awful. But otherwise, I mean, it's got
Great.
Absolutely. No, that was actually one of the first spaces that we identified as a pre-function space for potential VIP upgrades for some of our concerts at the Salina.
Well, and even just for meeting space,
Sure.
it's a very nice meeting space, but I don't think
Absolutely.
its potential is being realized. Anyway,
I think my wedding reception was there, I think. 1980 something.
well, it's the same AV system.
Mr. Valls, you had a comment?
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Brian Martin.
Brian Martin.
Yes, sir.
Where are you coming from?
Macon, Georgia. I managed the Macon Centerplex, which was a 8,000-seat arena and a 2,500-seat city auditorium. So,
Well, I don't know if in Georgia if they have Type A and Type B. Let's focus on Type A. Have you worked with economic development corporations like Type A and Type B?
no, sir.
Funding is concerned?
Yeah, this is actually a positive piece that I'm not used to. Using general funds for the most part and capital funds from municipalities in the past is what I'm familiar with. So this is a creative piece to be able to fund these facilities, which I'm excited about.
Yeah,
Mr. Valls, is your mic on?
No, ma'am. Thank you. The funding comes through the Type A board to fund your projects, and then it goes to the council for review, and hopefully they approve it. So it comes through here first. Heather, did we allocate some funding to help Mr. Martin, well, before he was there, and his team to attract, more A-list type performers? And I think we were going to add some, or we did add some to like a promotional
So
budget.
we have a co-promotion fund, which is the $650,000 is
Okay.
budgeted annually for that. And as we went ahead and left that in place for fiscal year 23.
Okay.
And as we continue going through this process, then, as Brian feels fit, we may want to come back and, may have a request for more. But for right now, for 23, that $650,000 is still in place.
Okay, that's going to get you think, where you need to be?
To start, yes, sir. I mean, there's a lot of requests from tenants. Obviously, traditionally, they've been funded with rent rebate with that piece, but also I see a huge asset in that and being able to go out and take more risk on some of these larger shows to bring the bigger artists to Corpus Christi.
Okay, good. Nice meeting you, Mr. Martin.
nice to
Thank
meet
you.
you as well.
Mr. Temez and I discussed that element with you, and it gave you a little bit of history how you'd come here for every request. And so now our board basically allocates the funds to the budget, and you just go straight to Mr. Zannoni's staff or Mr. Zannoni, and it gets approved much quicker.
Yes, sir.
Because a lot of times these decisions are now. We don't have time to wait for a board meeting.
Yeah.
So that makes it a lot easier to get things done.
Yeah, sure. Promoters, and just so you guys know, from my end, I've dealt with promoters and agents for 10 years, and with those, when they're ready to move, they're ready to move. And it takes, it could be the difference between, 8 hours on if you're going to get a show or if you're not going to get a show.
And Mr. Zannoni's available 24/7, so it's not ever a problem.
Yeah, but he's got funky takes in music.
Well, I'll go through the proper channels, I promise.
Did you bring any of your team here with you that you want to introduce?
No, sir. It's just me today.
Okay.
But we can do that at a later date.
Okay.
For sure.
Good. And then, Heather, can you work with him or somebody to get us
I will. Yeah, I'll work with him, get some available dates, and then swing back over to the board, and we'll get that scheduled.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Wilson.
Move we approve the
A motion by Mr. Wilson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Valls. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
And welcome to Corpus Christi.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This often, Mr. Phoenix, I'm going to ask you.
I think we're good.
Yes, sir. Just one comment, just to follow up from that last item we had. So tomorrow at our city council meeting, Brian will be there, as well as a few others from the OVG and OVG 360, to provide an update to city council on how things are going so far. And we'll also be speaking to the new policy that OVG has, which is to limit, if not focus on just them providing the food and beverage. The prior contract, that operator and the prior policy allowed outside vending and alcohol sales to take place, but there's some serious business issues with that, and so we'll talk to that. We'll talk about that as well tomorrow with the city council, just in case you hear some. We want to make sure you're aware.
I'm glad you're addressing that because I saw some reports in the news concerning that or
Right.
concerns from the citizens.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's warranted. OVG and their business model. Plus, we're looking at many other convention centers across the country that are significant, and generally, with the exception of a few things, like if there's a cultural diet, say for religious or cultural reasons, sometimes convention centers allow outside catering. But generally, whether it's OVG 360 or some other provider that's managing a convention center arena, they exclusively have the rights to food and beverage for numerous reasons. Health and safety is one, quality control of food, and the expectation from the customers too. And then an important thing to remember is that revenues that are generated from these sales go back into the facility. That might explain why our facility needs millions to bring back up to life, because a lot of the money's gone out to other folks in the community, which is fine. But the revenue generated helps to maintain the roofs, the chillers, the carpet, the kitchen. So it's really we're very community minded, very small business minded. You all know that, being on this board. But at stake is the business itself of making sure that building stays open to the community. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Mr. Walls.
Yeah, I don't think you find many places that allow outside, vendors.
I know.
Typically, it's an exclusive contract,
right,
where you have to use their services and food and drink. You don't find many places where you could just bring your stuff in.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'd have brought my stuff in a long time ago.
Mr. Temez?
We did discuss, Lee and I, about thanking him for retaining employees. And he said, yeah, all 100% of the employees that were working there were retained, and that was our concern there, of them retaining the employees.
They
Plus,
did.
Also, they do have 3 local vendors.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
very
selling
good.
food there right at the games.
Yeah.
Right. That's some of the transition in the business model that they offered as an example to the barbecue man.
Yeah.
They said, we'll give you a designated spot in the arena. It didn't fit with his business model, but that would have been real nice to have that barbecue there with that well-established restaurant. So they're working with local businesses. Another example is coffee. They're buying coffee locally from a vendor, a coffee shop that's on Alameda by Robert Street. And there's numerous ways that they're engaging small businesses. The model's a little different than what a few of the restaurant and bars are used to here. But as Commissioner Ball said, it's really best practice to do what we're doing.
Go ahead and say that, but
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Zanoni. There
thank
being
you.
no further business, meeting adjourned 2:34.